Welcome to the Whiskey Congress. Honest, open talk dedicated to speaking the truth to those who are open to hearing it. Black, white, right, left. Most importantly, honest, bold, and fueled by good whiskey. In Whiskey Veritas, we are Whiskey Congress. Join the evolution.
Welcome once again to Whiskey Congress. I'm coming at you from rural North Carolina once again. Steve's back in Ohio. And Steve, I saw your Facebook post about the Deadpool.
Well, I mean, it timed up. The way it timed up was pretty crazy. I mean, we had done our show, I think, on Monday, and then Tuesday, Gary Cohn, the top economic advisor for Trump, puts in his resignation, and that was that. So the Deadpool was quickly reset.
If Hope Hicks counts, his chief economic advisor also counts. Did you happen to catch any of the press conference when he was sort of saying goodbye to Gary Cohn?
No, I didn't. No.
It was fucking weird. He was saying things like, he's a really good guy. Yeah, he's kind of a globalist. Well, he's really not a globalist. Yeah, he's a globalist. And I'm like, you are literally talking to Alex Jones's crowd right now. It was bizarre, and of course, it was not scripted, so it came off Trump style.
I wonder, does Trump really even get what a globalist is? If he actually knew what it was, I don't know. Sometimes I just question if he, a lot of times it seems like he gets up there and just kind of starts talking and doesn't really have good background information on what he's saying.
I would like to remind you, he has the best words.
Right.
Anyway,
right.
So yeah, the Deadpool's reset. I kind of think that bailed you out a little bit. I think Tillerson was
Tillerson was risky, and especially now with where they are with these negotiations with North Korea. And I think if I was really thinking that out, I may have been able to get to Gary Cohn. But he's gone now. So now we really are down to kind of a select group of people who are relatively entrenched. So, now it's a real shot in the dark.
Do you want to go first, or would you like me to?
Honestly, I guess I will say I'll go first. You went first last time. I think Jared Kushner is going to be the next to be out. I think just he's got so many vulnerabilities with the debt that he has, his lack of political savvy, some of the positions that Trump has put him in that he's not really prepared for, and with no real sort of guidance, as a lot of people are kind of staying away from the Trump administration for fear of kind of being branded. I think that because he is such a liability, that at some point Trump is going to ask him to step down, or he will take the hint and hand in his resignation. So I'm going to go with Jared Kushner.
I think it's a very solid pick. That was very high on my list. I'm going to go with a bit of a change up though. I'm going to go with Sarah Huckabee Sanders. I think she, for the first time, said stuff that bothered Trump. He attacked her, and she's really easy to replace. I mean, press secretaries, come and go regularly with all presidencies. If I'm her, getting publicly criticized or privately criticized by the president after the number of times that she has stood there and just flat out, lied for him, I think she might. I think she could go of her own volition, or she could get pushed out the door because she did a very poor job of masking the Stormy Daniels accusations, which will not go away.
Yeah, I just, I kind of wonder. I guess my thing with the whole Stormy Daniels thing is just that I wonder if Trump even cares about that. I think he kind of looks at it as, it either he'll say it didn't happen and she's a liar and everybody's lying, or he'll just say it did happen and it's really nobody's business. And, the only thing people are hanging on is that the attorney paid her off, and they're trying to say that was a campaign finance violation, a campaign finance law violation, which even if it is, like, that's not enough to impeach him,
Yeah,
right? Like, I think
is
they would just
that a
pay
legal thing or
fine.
just an ethical thing? Like, can you get? I
Okay,
guess it probably.
so I mean, how is that? This is the same guy who's basically shutting down the EPA. Like, there's some ethical considerations there as well. But again, you can clearly he's not too worried about. I mean, his kid was just born and he's sleeping with a porn. I mean, I don't even know if he's cheating on her. Did he? He seems like he might have even told Melania. Like, no one's bringing this up. Like, where's Melania and all this? It's almost like they just assume that she knew.
I've heard a few people say, like, Melania must be pissed. I'm thinking Melania's going to be saying better her than me.
Well, yeah, obviously, but still, they still had this image that she's his wife, and and here's the thing. I mean, he attacked Bill Clinton about being, about being unfaithful and fidelity issues and things like that. So, I think there's obviously there's the moral aspect and the ethical, but from a legal standpoint, what does it get you? Like, he's already proven that, he can say and do a lot of things, and it's not going to shake his base. His base is going to defend him no matter what. They're already defending. I mean, like they just with this they just deflect it.
Yeah, I agree.
They say either Bill Clinton was worse, or they go to the fact that, well, it didn't matter. He wasn't president. And he didn't lie about it under oath. And so, there's no there.
Steve, in all seriousness, I don't care that he banged a porn star. I didn't care that Bill Clinton got a blowjob. I didn't care that Bill Clinton lied about a blowjob. I guess under oath, it's a different story. But I care nothing about who these people are fucking or not fucking, unless they're fucking the American public or me. And that's so. As long as there's a porn star in the story, though.
And it's just like, it's funny, though. I kind of wish that, some of these people who are defending Trump, like, it's just, they're kind of taking that same approach of, well, he's doing such a good job as president. I don't care who he sleeps with. And it's kind of like, yeah, well, why do you care so much who gay people sleep with, or, transgendered people and all that other stuff? Like, I mean, that's where there's a little bit of hypocrisy here, but
there's a lot of hypocrisy.
Not you.
No, I
in
understand.
particular, but I'm saying the Trump defenders.
I completely understand, and you're right. I'm just standing on the. I'm trying to be consistent. I didn't care when Bill Clinton did it. I think if you did, there's a book about presidential mistresses. As far as I know, there is not a president who didn't have one. My favorite example is FDR had a mistress. It was well known, and he was in a fucking wheelchair.
Yeah.
So
although I don't think Obama had one, though.
Probably not. He probably didn't, and he may be the only one.
Yeah.
And George Washington may not have, but we know Thomas Jefferson did.
Right.
All right. So anyway,
where does Abe Lincoln fall on that?
Well, I don't know where you're going, but there's a couple ways you could be going there.
Well, I'm just saying. I mean, does it? Because the rumor is that Abe Lincoln, had a man friend.
Yes, that's where I thought you were going.
I mean, I guess that still counts, but
yes,
who knows? Maybe that's why his wife went nuts,
technically, it's not a mistress. You got me there. You got me on a technicality.
So anyway, Gary Cohn leaving. The reason why Gary Cohn left is essentially these tariffs. I did a Facebook post on the tariffs, a Facebook Live post on the tariffs, and essentially, Gary Cohn I think he said, listen, if you do this, I believe it'll have, irreparable harm to the economy, and it's either me or the tariffs. And Trump said, screw you. It's, we need these tariffs. And so Gary Cohn said, all right, well, I'm out. And, I have mixed thoughts about the tariffs. I think that they're are they potentially dangerous? Absolutely, right? I mean, we're charging outside people extra money to bring their stuff in, which means that they could turn around and flip and do the same to us. Goods that rely on steel and aluminum, the cost for those things initially we have to assume are going to go up. And the question is, how do we respond to that? And how do we deal with it? And then also, what are some of the other things that could happen? Like, what are the repercussions? Like, what will what will other foreign countries start to charge us for our goods and our particular goods, our raw materials going into their countries, which then could, which also in fact impacts prices here. Um, my first thought was all that is not good because of the uncertainty, because we don't know what's going to happen, right? And what sort of impact is this going to have on, our relationship with China and goods coming from China, and, how is that going to impact costs? Me being in the real estate business, I'm fortunate right now. We had to go through and look at all our projects, but we don't have any new construction projects. Everything we have is rehab, so there's not a lot of steel and aluminum, so it won't impact our pricing too much initially. But there was some concern there. But on the flip side of the concern, listen, I'm from Youngstown, Ohio, and in the '90s when NAFTA was signed, I mean that was pretty much a death warrant for the area that I grew up in. Steel mills, they started closing, faster than you could count. I mean, it was layoff after layoff, and my dad got laid off from one, he got laid off from another, to eventually where he just wasn't working anymore. And so I saw the impact of it directly, and that was when NAFTA was signed, the North American Free Trade Agreement, and that is what kind of ended the tariffs. And it's exactly what it sounds like. It's free trade. It's hey, we can all trade with each other, and this whole you bring yours in, and I'll ship mine over here. And before that, we did have tariffs, and so the question is, if maybe this drives prices up, but at the same time, if it revitalizes certain industries and helps to, get people back working, then, maybe it isn't the end of the world, because at some point in time, the prices will adjust.
So I've got a couple of things to say about that. I'm also from a steel town that collapsed, Buffalo, New York, obviously. When my parents' generation was growing up, there were people who thought my dad was an idiot for going to college because you're going to have the steel mills here forever. And obviously they didn't. But there's a bunch of things I don't like about this. One is this feels very unilateral from Trump. I mean, he spoke in front of the steel and aluminum folks, and then the next thing you know, it's happening. I didn't know something like that could happen that quickly without some sort of congressional involvement.
It's an executive order.
I didn't know you could slap tariffs on with an executive order. I think it's a pretty big reach. So, and the key thing I think that I also think about is what you said, instability. So the stock market until today had been getting pounded in the last couple days because this guy opens his mouth and all of a sudden things are happening. So the notion that the president really doesn't affect the Dow typically is true. But when the president is changing the level of security in the economy, suddenly it's not true anymore. And this is one of the very few instances I can think of where a president's actions had a direct and immediate impact on the stock market the way it did. I don't know. Again, it's that plus the fact that most economists are saying this is a bad idea. Now, most economists don't give a shit about Buffalo and Youngstown. And it's truly a Wall Street versus Main Street thing. So I'm concerned because of the apparent lack of thought that went into this and the fact that it literally drove his ego into driving away his economic advisor. The one thing Trump has been saying, talking about tariffs since long before he was running for president. You can go back through his tweets, back to 2012 or whenever he started tweeting, and there are references to them then. And
I guess part of me says, listen, yes, there is the instability because we don't know what's going to happen, but I don't know if that should, the fear of the unknown may not be the best way to handle policy, right? And so, maybe it is a risk worth taking. And I mean, if we take a complete bath on it, then I mean that's just one more feather in, the Democrats' hat in 2020. But unfortunately, to get that, it's going to take, it would impact everybody's wallet. But at the same time, to get him out of office, I mean, it may take something like that where you could say, listen, he did this, and now look, look who, all these people are struggling financially. He did this great tax thing that everyone, he was so quick to praise. But he turned around and slapped tariffs on steel and aluminum, and now, I'm pretty sure everyone would give up their the tax policy for, someone to remove these to get things back to where they were. So we don't know what the future holds. So I think, while I have concerns about it, I'm not necessarily looking at it as it's the end of the world. It's the worst thing ever. We really have to watch how it plays out. And the other thing, you said about the economists, economists are wrong. Like they're almost as bad as weathermen, if not worse. Because, economists are the ultimate non-risk takers. So, good luck finding one that agrees anything out of the ordinary is good.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. And typically I would say that when you make a move like this, it takes, it takes years for an industry to build back the capacity to fill the gaps that get created by this. But in this case, I don't think that's true because there's a lot of steel mills. My ex-girlfriend's dad works for a steel mill, and I know that they were cutting jobs and cutting production.
Well, so, to cut you off, there's a steel mill in Lorain that's actually firing back up, Lorain County, Ohio here, and it's gonna it should be ready in the next few months, and it's gonna be about 1,000 jobs.
I'm going to reserve
for
judgment.
me, as much as I'm not a fan of Trump, or I don't like him and a lot of his policies. And there's some policies of his that I am vehemently against, but I can't get mad at this. I watched what happened. I lived it when they sold everyone that free trade was good. Maybe it was for everybody else, but all I know is that it ruined Christmas for my family for about 15 years.
Understood.
My dad really didn't get back on his feet until the mid 2000s. And even then it was a struggle. So, that's why I'm open to see something different. I'm open to seeing it, because we've had this now for, I think NAFTA came in at like 96, I want to say, or 94.
I thought that was a Clinton era thing. It definitely was.
Yeah, well, it was like Clinton signed
92 to 2000. Yeah, somewhere in that range.
First year was
92 was his first year. So
yeah, so it was Clinton's first year, and so, but I mean, it was initiated by Bush. Bush got a lot of pushback on it, but then Clinton came in and kind of rode in on the white horse, signed NAFTA. Open the gates of free trade, and then threw a bunch of black kids in prison.
Now, here's the other part about it, though. Trump has said that the tariffs will not apply to Mexico and Canada, which is NAFTA.
Right, and I don't know how much steel we get from Mexico and Canada.
I think Canada's our largest. We import more from Canada than any other country.
Oh, so then this is directed at China.
Yes, and India.
Right. Well, we'll see. We'll see. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not gonna write it off as the worst thing ever just because it came from Trump.
I agree.
And we don't typically like the word tariffs. As long as it doesn't impact the cost of whiskey. Although someone said it may impact the cost of Canadian whiskey, which I was like, all right, who cares? Although there's some good Canadian whiskeys. They're good, not great, but there's some good Canadian whiskeys.
I don't remember the last time I had Canadian whiskey. I used to drink Crown Royal every now and then. I got sick as fuck on Seagram's years ago.
One thing we do back home, it's called a stiletto. It is chilled Canadian Club with just a drop of amaretto. You shake it up, and it's our summertime shot. It's also like it goes down relatively smooth as long as you like amaretto, and it can be lethal. Like because we can rip a bunch of them off at a time, and that ends with some things going wrong.
Canadian Club in Buffalo when I was a kid was like the high-end working man's whiskey. I'm not a fan. Okay, I'm not a fan.
Whiskey.
Because I got really tore up on Seagram's in college, and I don't think I've touched that shit since. And Seagram's and Canadian Club are too close for comfort for me. So the other huge thing coming out of the White House is the announcement that Trump and Kim Jong-un are going to have a meeting, and it's going to happen in South Korea and could happen as soon as May. I've got some very strong feelings about this, but I'd like to throw it to you first.
One, I'll believe it when I see it. There's a long time between now and May for that to get derailed by either one of these two guys that are head cases, especially when it comes to each other. Although there seems to be some sort of a weird spark in North Korea's step lately with the rhetoric coming out of their camp. So I'll be curious to see what happens. Now, North Korea has been angling to get, in front of the president of the United States for, 30 years. And it's been our standard policy to, not allow that to happen until they gave up their nukes. Now, I'm leaning more towards this is a bad move and Trump shouldn't do it. Just leave them isolated there. But at the same time, we've been doing that for the last 30 years, and all that's happened is the country has gotten more and more aggressive, most aggressive with Kim Jong-un, the most recent un of the uns, or the ills, or the Kims, or whatever. And so, I guess it's a wait and see, but I'm waiting and seeing with a very judgmental eye. I'm giving it that grandmotherly side eye, like you're about to do something, that's going to get you in a lot of trouble. Okay.
I love it. I think that I agree with the one thing you said there that I really agree with is we've been doing nothing but trying to sanction and squeeze them for more than 30 years. And I fully think I also agree that either one of these guys could blow this up with one ill-advised tweet or statement. I think it's great that we're talking to potentially going to talk to North Korea, because without the willingness to talk, nothing comes of anything. I also think from an intelligence standpoint, this could be a really good opportunity for us to gain intelligence into the North Korean whatever sphere, because we have essentially no real solid intelligence there. And I think it's we've talked about this before on the show. we need to know, does Kim Jong-un act like this because he knows it gets attention, brings him hope that he can get other countries to jump through hoops, or is the dude's reality button just plain fucking gone? And does he actually believe like he can militarily take on the Western world and win? I don't know the answer to that. And something like this gives you a much better chance of learning.
Yeah, you're right. And that's why, I said, I guess I don't like it, but I'll do it, which is okay. I tell people that all the time. Like, I don't like a lot of things, but I do them. And I reserve the right to openly complain about them, but I'm still doing it, so shut the fuck up. And that's kind of where I'm at with this. I don't like it. I reserve the right to say I don't think this is the best idea, but you're doing it, and there's potential there. You're right. You have to be, willing to come to the table and have a conversation in order for change and progress to be made. So, that's I completely see the wisdom there. I still just don't like it.
Okay.
Here's a question though. What does this do? Let's just fast forward, and we have removed the nuclear weapons. They stopped their nuclear weapons program. They have some unification talks, and they start to unify with South Korea, and all is well, and it's all happy and good by 2020.
Okay.
What does that do for Trump's legacy at that point?
I don't really care if Trump's legacy is a positive one because he turns things around. I'm happy about that. I don't expect it, but I'm not worried about people saying, well, he's really doing a great job with North Korea, so we got to give this guy another 4 years. I don't see that happening. And
you don't. I mean,
no, I don't.
I think that's naive to think that. I mean, if things are going really well with Trump, or with North Korea in 4 years with Trump, like his team is going to use that, and people obviously his base will soak it up, but there are people on the fence who the Democrats are going to target, which I think is the wrong move, by the way, who might be swayed by seeing that. They're like, listen, he finally got this guy to shut up. Why wouldn't I vote for him? Why would I want to stop that, impede that, when the next person who comes in may screw that all up?
I think it's very likely.
Let's say the tariffs actually are successful, and this thing with North Korea actually works out. Like, there are people who will absolutely look at that and say, "Hey, that worked for me. I don't want to disrupt what's happening here. I don't want things to go backwards. So let's stay with the hot hand." Like a running back in football. And so, slipping, a little sidebar. I think Democrats have to kind of keep that in mind and don't do what they've been doing for the last, 30 years, and waiting until the last 2 weeks of an election, to go on black radio talk shows and go into a couple of churches and think that they're going to get the black vote, because, black voters have said that, listen, we may not like either candidate, but we won't vote for you just because, and we will stay home, right? Which is a big part of the reason why Trump got elected, is because you saw record numbers of black people staying home and not voting for either Hillary or Donald Trump.
Yeah, but how do you think a successful policy with North Korea is going to impact the black vote dramatically?
Well, it's not, Jim. And what I'm saying is, so it's not, but it will shift white voters, right? It will shift white voters who are on the fence. And so what Democrats need to do is they better get on the ground, get on their feet, and get knocking on doors and going to churches. And they need to start doing that shit now. They need to start doing it for 2018, and they need to start doing it for 2020. And they need to start addressing issues that actually impact the black community, things that we care about. Because we don't really, the black community doesn't give a damn about North Korea. You could argue whether they should or not, but they don't. And
okay,
so
I agree with that.
better start talking to them about things that affect them, or else they will stay home again, and the Democrats will be sitting there holding their dicks like, what the fuck happened? And it'll be it'll be 2016 all over for them again, and then we'll hear the same shit out of Tom Perez, like, oh, we made a critical error in not courting the black vote. It's like, well, how many times do you need to make that critical error?
I don't disagree with anything you're saying. I just think that because of what you said, I think this particular issue, if I'm staying on North Korea, I don't think it impacts the black vote at all, and B,
I know, Jim, it was a sidebar.
Okay, sorry. All right. Okay, but
I understand that.
Let me go. All right, let me go to a different point. This might hurt him with his base. I think a lot of his base wants a war with an easily beatable, cartoonish character, and a move towards peace and military de-escalation might actually not play well with his base.
Listen, I won't argue that. I think there are people in his base who want a war with North Korea. I don't think the war with North Korea would be an easy win. I think we would lose. I think there would be a lot of bloodshed. I think we would, at some point in time, we would eventually have to go in. And because we don't know enough about it, I think just not having that intel could be pretty harmful. Not to mention the risk to other countries in the region.
That's the big thing.
So, there's a lot of damage there, but if he does figure it out, I don't see it hurting him, honestly. Like, I mean, come on, let's think this out. He's his base is so entrenched, and like they will support him no matter what. As long as he doesn't do something, just like as long as he doesn't convert to Islam and start sucking dicks on TV, like there's just nothing he can do that they're gonna like. If he says peace with North Korea, they'll support him. If he says war with North Korea, they'll support him. If he says peace with North Korea, they'll say, "Oh, look, that's Obama couldn't even do that, and he was this great peacemaker." If they go to war with Korea, they'll say, "Oh, he had the balls to do something Obama didn't do. Obama just did nothing." Right?
That's
listen,
probably true.
people, like they want to support him. They like the rhetoric. They like the whole he tells it like it is. It allows us to say what we really want to say. There's no such thing as racism anymore. So screw you, black people. We can't stand you because you're lazy, blah, 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 blah. And that's just us telling it like it is. Like, that's the that's the manifestation of all of it. It doesn't have anything to do with his policies, really. I mean, it's just that root cause,
It's his brand.
that whole thing of nationalism that he bit into. That's what's there. So it doesn't matter whether we go to war or not.
Okay, well, there's a sidebar, and I understand what you're saying. I'm choosing to be optimistic about this particular piece of the puzzle, and
just like you were optimistic about the election.
Yeah, okay. No, I wasn't. I was not optimistic at all. I thought Hillary was going to win. I wasn't happy about that. All right, so sorry, I'm thinking about 10 different things right now. But there was a gun control bill passed in Florida signed by the governor today. This is another thing that really doesn't, in my opinion, make anything any better. It's going to let politicians pat themselves on the back.
Oh my God, Jim. So did you see this?
What's that?
The Browns just acquired Tyrod Taylor from the Bills.
Are you all right? Are you fucking with me?
Jim, I wouldn't do this to you. I mean, I would, but I'm not. But
yeah, okay, you absolutely would. No, I have not seen that. Oh my goodness, that's for what did they get for him?
3rd round pick.
That shocks the hell out of me. They had pretty much said that they were going to not make a move until they had the quarterback situation settled. Obviously, that changed. Wow. Okay. Sports interruption. This is like the 3rd time there's been a major Buffalo Bills thing happen while we were recording. Last one was Marcel Darius, and I thought you were fucking with me on that.
Why do I always know it before you?
That is an excellent question. I mean, because my phone's on Do Not Disturb, so we can have this conversation is why in this case. I would bet you there's going to be 10 things popping up. But the Darius thing was crazy because I thought you were fucking with me the whole time, and you got to watch my meltdown. And wow, that's interesting, and the fact that it impacts the Bills and the Browns, so then loosely the Steelers. What are your thoughts about it?
I think it's a good move for the Browns. I think it allows the Browns to comfortably draft a quarterback at number 1 and not really have to worry about Tyrod Taylor's ego, because Tyrod Taylor has been an average quarterback the last 3 seasons, and so he's just one of those guys, kind of like Alex Smith, where he's just always going to be on the ropes. He may come out, and you look at what the Browns did today. They traded for Jarvis Landry. They got him from the Dolphins, a wide receiver. So you match up Jarvis Landry with Josh Gordon, and you bring in a Tyrod Taylor, who now Tyrod Taylor has 2 dynamic guys to throw to, and Todd Haley, an offensive coordinator who's not afraid to go downfield, who's not afraid to attack. You could see a potential really talented team. And you have Duke Johnson on that Browns team, who's a good running back who can catch out of the backfield. I think he led the league. He led all running backs with receptions and yards this year, or close to it. And so you have some pieces now where, this team will not go 0-16 again. Will they be a playoff contender? I don't think so, because they have some serious questions on the defense. But I think you have a team that's kind of starting to take form. And now you can draft a guy in the first round with that first pick and not necessarily have to worry about him playing right away. Not have to worry about him being the savior. You can probably get a year or so out of Tyrod Taylor before you have to bring some kid on and, kind of see what happened, or you can avoid what happened with Deshaun Kaiser this year, where he just got thrown to the wolves before he was ready, and may have caused irreparable harm to his career.
While you were talking, I opened the Buffalo Bills app and the WGR, the sports radio station in Buffalo app, and neither of them have anything on this. And that's not me questioning your sources, because when the fucking Darius thing went down, same thing. How do the Buffalo... this is fucking ridiculous.
I mean,
stop enjoying my frustration so much.
I'm not. I don't know why you think that. I really don't enjoy your frustrations. I don't revel in your pain and anguish as much as you think I do. I'm really not that cold-blooded.
I don't think you're reveling. I'm not in pain. You know that I had kind of, I clearly said I did not want Tyrod Taylor back with the same offensive coordinator. If they would have kept that duo together, I would not have dealt well with it. I'm not upset that Tyrod's gone, but I was curious if Brian Daboll, the new offensive coordinator, could do something. So now we're definitely starting from scratch at that position.
Yeah, but I mean, I think he's a relatively young coordinator, and which isn't necessarily bad, as we see some of these young guys are really creative. And they have some dynamic offenses because the defenses aren't that much different, and their offenses are different, and so they're creating space and allowing for things to happen that some of these old these West Coast offenses and things like that just aren't quite as effective against. Now, I think there's some, depending on what happens with the Bills, if a guy like a Josh Rosen drops, which he could, because there are some questions about, the most ridiculous thing, and I don't want to get too much into the draft, but a guy like Josh Rosen, everyone questions, well, is he really into football? Like, he's into, he's really into political movements, and he's got outspoken political opinions and thoughts about the economy, and he's got a diverse, get that shit out of here. The kid, when he's on the field, he can sling the rock. He's a student of the game. And you can have diverse interests and not necessarily, and still be, a high-end quarterback. I don't buy that bullshit at all. So there's potential there for the Bills to pick up someone. Where are you guys drafting at?
Number 21 and number 22. And what I do not want them to do.
Okay, so Josh Rosen won't be there.
No.
I thought you for some reason I thought you had the 11 pick.
No.
Well, Josh Rosen is off the board. So, who could be in play for the Bills is a Lamar Jackson.
Yeah. I think Lamar Jackson and Mason Rudolph are the most likely to be still around if they stay in those positions. And
Lamar Jackson's not going anywhere. Lamar Jackson's not.
Well, switching. No. There's a lot of idiots in Buffalo, mostly working for the sports radio station I mentioned earlier, who are like, if I'm the Bills, I'm trading number 21, number 22, my first rounder next year, a player, and another pick. And I'm like, then you're a fucking idiot. Giving up 5 assets to draft a quarterback in a deep draft. You saw how I reacted to the Sammy Watkins trade. If they do that bullshit, just lock me in a room for 2.5 months.
Yeah,
I will go fucking crazy.
I'll have the tranquilizer.
Thank you, please.
Go
for the jugular vein. I'll need a big dose.
Yeah. I mean, there's some potential there for the Bills. I think, you get a young quarterback in there. Um, I could also see the Bills maybe then saying, all right, we got a third round pick, and then let's bundle something, and then maybe they go for like an AJ McCarron, which they feel, he doesn't have the same amount of experience as a Tyrod Taylor, but they just feel that he looks the part and maybe has shown in the little bit of tape that we have, he's shown enough where they feel they can work with him.
Yeah, I would not be thrilled with that move. I'm not an AJ McCarron guy, but that wouldn't be crazy. So the Browns in the last couple days have acquired, or was it today that they got Jarvis Landry?
Yeah, that happened today.
So Jarvis Landry and Tyrod Taylor in the same day, and Jarvis Landry's an interesting spot, right? Because he just signed a franchise tag, and
and the report is that he's willing to sign he's willing to get a long-term deal done with the Browns. Once the deal is officially done. So, I will be very interested to see, what the Browns do. Because the other thing the Browns could do is, I mean, now you have Tyrod Taylor. Maybe you go Saquon Barkley at 1, to get another dynamic playmaker in there. So now, you'll still have, I mean, at 4. If you take Saquon Barkley at 1, so 2 and 3, even if they take someone takes Josh Allen and someone takes Stan Darnold, that still leaves you with a couple, quality choices there at quarterback.
Baker Mayfield's there, and
Baker Mayfield, Josh Rosen. I think I like Josh Rosen a little bit more. But you still have some guys there that could fit in, and now you have a guy out of the backfield in Saquon Barkley who's dynamic. You got Josh Gordon who's proven to be dynamic as long as he can stay on the field. You have a Jarvis Landry there, and you have a Corey Coleman who wasn't good, and he was a receiver on an 0-16 team, but has shown potential. And when you put that many other guys around him, who knows how he could develop. There's a lot of potential there for the Browns, I think. So,
I mean, they're certainly making bold moves. You got to give them credit for that.
That's John Dorsey. He's their new general manager. They brought him in, kind of actually in the towards the end of this season. They fired Sashi Brown, who was just moving way too slow in developing the team. But what Sashi Brown did do is he did give him a very young base to work with, right?
Right,
the Browns
and a ton of cap
the
space.
Youngest team in the league by far. And there are some parts there that, Shashi Brown and, even a little bit of Ray Farmer added. But, now you got to get away from the analytics. And now you need to bring in, true football players. And that seems to be what they're doing.
I want to talk to you about the franchise tag, because you and I have had a bunch of discussions about, athletes making money and the, white guy with the lunchbox, I'd play the game for free. That's a topic you've gone off on a few times. And the franchise tag really lights that fire, because someone gets paid a huge amount of money guaranteed for 1 year, and the players hate getting it done to them. And the person on the outside who says, I'd play this game for free, goes nuts because Jarvis Landry is bitching about getting a 1 year deal worth $16 million. And I don't know how much Le'Veon Bell got when he was franchise tagged. It really highlights the business aspect of the NFL, and it also stokes that fire of, middle class, lower middle class people seeing these athletes making that money and losing their minds.
You have to understand what the franchise tag is. I mean, it's a 1 year guaranteed deal where you get paid, the average of the top 5 guys at your position. And it is a bundle of money right there up front. And that's great. But the problem is, if you get hurt, then there's nothing that's guaranteed. Now, NFL contracts aren't guaranteed like basketball contracts or baseball contracts, where I think Bobby Bonilla is still somehow getting paid by the Mets.
He is.
But, the NFL contracts, there is some like if you sign a 7-year deal and you get hurt in year 3, well, there are, you don't get the same amount of, you don't get all the money you would get, let's say, if that were an NBA contract or a Major League Baseball contract, but you still get a pretty decent amount of that, right? So you sign a deal for, let's say you sign a 5-year deal for $10 million per year, and then you do a signing bonus of, we'll say $20 million just to make it easy, right? So if you do that, that's, $50 million in salary and then another $20 million in a bonus. So you're at $70 million, right? If you get, let's say if you get hurt, right, in year 3 of that, well, you still have the $20 million signing bonus. And then you have the first 2 years of that contract. So now you're up to $40 million. And then you may get some sort of a medical settlement for the remaining, the remaining 2 years on that 5-year deal. So you walk out of there with, let's say, $50 million, right, on a $70 million contract. Now, if you let's say you franchise, right, you take the franchise tag for this year and it's $11 million just for this 1 year, and you get hurt at any point in time in this year, then that's all you get is $11 million. And now, and because you didn't get a deal, you have potentially left anywhere from,
40 million,
anywhere from 20 to $70 million on the table, right? And that's why the guys are pissed, because
I understand.
Listen, you can be as mad as you want to be about the amount of money that the guys make, but it's still a business. So once you take away the massive amount, like, just look at it, like, put yourself in those same shoes on your level. What would you rather have, the long-term security or the one-time burst? And I think that's where and when you look at it that way, it makes sense why the guys get upset and they hate the franchise tag.
I totally get it, and this is something I can completely see both sides of the equation. I see why a player says, you're inserting risk into my life and taking away my big chance of that huge payday. And I understand why teams say, we negotiated this for a reason. We're going to pay you a shit ton of money. What I don't what I have a hard time with are the guys who get franchise tagged and then say, you know what, I'm going to hold out. Well, you're not in the long run, because even though you might think you're deserving of that $40 million payday, turning down the 11 is crazy. And it is 11 guaranteed for 1 year, and you're right, there's no guarantees after that. So I understand why players don't like it. I understand why GMs use it. What I don't understand are the guys who say, to spite you for doing this, I'm going to fuck with my team.
Yeah, you know why they do it? Because,
I know exactly why, but I just don't agree with it.
This year for the Texans.
Was that?
It was a tackle. They put the franchise tag on him. He was offensive tackle, and he said, "I'm not playing," because ultimately and if you look, there were a lot of offensive linemen who went down this year with, some pretty serious leg injuries. I mean, Joe Thomas went out this year, and Joe Thomas hadn't missed a game in, his entire career. So, that particular player sat out until the middle of the season, came back, and then they ended up working out a trade, and I think they sent him to Seattle. And he ends up getting the big deal. But part of it is football is such a brutal sport. Like, some guys say, listen, I've made enough money to this point where I'd rather sit out and not make money, where in money, money not earned is money that you can't earn back. I understand that. But if you think that the team will ultimately cave because of your importance and value, then maybe it does make sense to say, okay, I'm going to sit out and wait them out and then come back to this again, because I don't want to risk that devastating injury that's going to take a $70 million deal and turn it into a $10 million deal.
I get it. I mean, so the perfect illustration of that, though, is Le'Veon Bell, right? He was tagged with a franchise tag, said, if you do that, I'll retire. Now he's saying, no, I'm not going to retire. So it's understandable why Le'Veon Bell would bluff, for lack of a better word. But
well, I mean, here's the thing with Le'Veon Bell. Like, again, I mean, let's not be too dismissive of what he's doing.
I hope he gets traded to the Browns during this conversation, by the way.
Obviously, he's being when he says he's going to retire, he's going over the top. I mean, he did sit out of training camp last year. And he said he will sit out of training camp again this year and come in after the preseason because he for damn sure doesn't want to get hurt, in training camp or in a preseason game, um, when when he's playing on the franchise tag. But part of his situation is a little bit different because while the Steelers aren't as good without Le'Veon Bell, they've got Big Ben, they've got
Antonio
Antonio
Brown.
Brown, they've got Martavis Bryant, Jesse James. Like they've got some weapons there, Juju Smith-Schuster, and so he knows that while they won't be quite as dynamic without him, that they can survive without him. So his sitting out for the season doesn't advance his position all that much. And if it, and he knows that running backs can, but that's how, a running back can come in and kind of catch fire. So obviously he's going to come in and play. But he is trying to push the Steelers to get a deal done. And part of the problem with Le'Veon Bell is he is the team's leading rusher, and he's also the second leading receiver. And so he wants to be paid for that. He basically wants to be paid like a number one running back and a number two receiver. Which is, I don't even know what he's asking for. But I think it's between $12 and $14 million a year.
You and I talk sports quite a bit, and I'm one of the guys that says running backs are one of the easiest positions in the league to replace without a huge drop off. Having said that, there are exceptions, and Le'Veon Bell is one of them. He's got a skill set that is just amazing to watch, even if you're not a Steelers fan, which everyone who knows me knows I am not. But like he is it's not so much just his physical gifts, it's his vision and his it seems like he's controlling the speed of the game at times. I mean, I don't know how else to describe it.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, he has amazing patience, he has amazing vision, and he's got an amazing burst. And those things as a running back or receiver, really, I mean, because he's also got great hands, just make him amazingly dynamic and hard to stop. You can slow him down, but at some point in time, he's going to break off and get his and impact the game. And, it happens. He does it almost 16 games a year. So, and that in and of itself has a certain amount of value. Now, where he has hurt himself in the past is, one, he got injured early on a couple of times and didn't finish the season. And that hurts his value. And then, he had multiple suspensions for weed and cannabis. And that hurts as well. So, the Steelers are looking at that and saying, can we trust you? And can we trust you to stay healthy, which you don't have a lot of control over? And can we trust you to not do something stupid? Which, this year he didn't have any issues with weed or, drugs or anything like that, which is good. But, who's to say once you give a guy a $90 million contract that he doesn't get a little, he doesn't get a little lax? Now, I don't think he will, but it's something that the Steelers can say and should say when they're trying to underwrite this deal and say, does it make sense? Can we trust them? And so that's where there's got to be, there's going to have to be some give and take. I think the Steelers have, and I think that's where it's at. I think they've said, we look at what you're doing on the field. We're well aware of your contribution, but this is where you've hurt us. Games we needed you weren't on the field because of injury, because you were suspended. And so we're going to knock a few million off of this contract per year. And that's where they're going to have to figure out, what the nexus is.
So I've had my TV has been on MSNBC while we've been talking on mute, obviously. And the headlines that popped up while we've been talking have been Trump quotes, "I'm tired of being reined in." Putin on Trump. He seems like a really reasonable guy. And Sam Nunberg, who is becoming the next comical political figure and saying that he's going to defy grand jury orders. And he's a lawyer who doesn't seem to understand what that really implies. Sorry for the sidebar, but I do have I do want to throw one more thing out there about politics, and that is that...
Hey, before you do that, though, so... The Packers just traded Demarius Randall to the Browns. he's a cornerback. Oh my God, the Browns are just, they said, that's this. We're they pulled a book out of the Cleveland Cavs and said, we'll just flip the whole damn team.
Wow. Hey, you know what? It's when you suck as bad as they have, and you have that kind of cap space and that kind of draft collateral, you can steer the league, and that's what they're doing. I mean,
yeah,
by the way, I still have not gotten a push.
And like Sashi Brown wouldn't have done this. I mean, and these guys are no one. Landry is still young. Tyrod, he's a little bit older. I think Tyrod Taylor's like 28.
Somewhere around there.
Demarius Randall is still young. So I mean, these are all good moves. But anyway, sorry. Please go back to the politics that are not nearly as interesting as what's going on in the NFL right now. Continue.
But anyway, I'm annoyed because I don't have any of the stuff coming through. I am focused on our show, not getting my live stream done. Sorry. So
that wasn't even an insult because you didn't. Whatever you were trying to say, you didn't say it right. Not getting my live stream done. What does that even mean?
I've been drinking whiskey this entire time. I've been drinking Knob Creek, which is. I'm not gonna score it because we're not drinking it together. But that probably didn't come out the way I wanted it to. So Stacy Dash, former actress, former Fox News person.
She was in a Kanye West video too.
Oh,
and she's. I mean, I hate to say it, but she is smoking hot. So there's that.
And she is trying to become the congresswoman from the 44th district of California, which encompasses, I think you told me, Compton, Inglewood, predominantly black.
Pretty much, that's Dr. Dre and Ice Cube area.
So my thoughts on this are, you can never say a celebrity can't become a politician anymore. I mean, that's been disproven multiple times, and now in the presidency in the ultimate case. I know that she was a super conservative, super hot black woman who was on Fox. I don't know a whole hell of a lot about her, to be honest with you, other than what I just said.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I don't know where I don't know where. I don't know if she's got a degree, if she went to college, where it came from. Not that that's required to be a congressman, but or a congresswoman in her case. I watched her a couple of times on Fox, and she doesn't really blow you away with, this intelligence or insightfulness that you would want in a congressperson or a person representing.
I guarantee she's smart enough to make a snowball, carry it into Congress, and say, "See, global warming isn't real."
Well, and here's the problem. I think that as I've gotten older and the more I've paid attention to what our politicians are saying, I'm realizing that even if these guys are Ivy League educated, they're just so out of touch with what's happening in their districts, what's happening in the country. They have this ridiculous bird's eye view, and they don't relate well. They don't speak for anyone other than corporations and whoever gives them the most money. And so, my expectation of what we're getting out of our politicians has been greatly diminished. And so now when I look at a person like Stacy Dash, or I look at a Donald Trump, I can't even say, well, you're not qualified, because I think the whole thing of qualifications has been just destroyed, right? It's been completely dismantled. And now it's just, do you look the part? Do you sound the part? Do you toe
the line?
Do you have financial backing? Right? If you look the part and sound the part, we can get you financial backing, and whatever your past is, we can spin that into some sort of a story on the campaign trail. And then once we get you in, as long as you vote yes on these particular issues, then we can keep you in office. And that's Democrat or Republican.
Right. And here's the thing. Here's why she becomes a significant figure in the 2018 congressional race. It's going to be a crazy race. I mean, all these people who are speculating that the Democrats are going to take back both houses of Congress are pissing me off, because it's a wild assumption with a level of arrogance and lax thinking that I'm very uncomfortable with. But
well, I mean, they're basing it off of Alabama. They're basing it off of Virginia.
I get it.
And
but
I think that both those were extreme, especially obviously Alabama was a very extreme case with Roy Moore and what was going on there. So
an accused child,
and the Republicans, and Steve Bannon just made a huge critical error in pushing Moore instead of Luther Strange. You get Luther Strange in there.
He walks into the end zone, no doubt.
What's that?
Luther Strange walks into the end zone in that race. I mean,
he walks in backwards. So I mean that was a gift basically handed over to Democrats from the Republicans. The rest of them won't be that easy. Virginia was a result of a huge effort on the ground by the Democrats, which we were talking about earlier, and Alabama was too. But it wasn't hard for people to see what was going on in Alabama. The race got really ugly in Virginia as well. And so if the Democrats are going to cause this blue wave that they're talking about, they're going to need to see that type of effort across the board, because there's going to be no easy wins for Democrats. There's just not going to be, and there shouldn't be. Not that there should be easy wins for the Republicans, because they're not doing any better. But as a African American black male, like, I'm pissed as shit at the Democrats. Like, what the hell are they doing? I don't. There's a lot of people that are waiting to see what they do, what their actual message is. They've been really tone deaf the last 20 years.
105 years.
Yeah, I mean, really since their inception. I mean, because before the big Dixie flip, they were definitely not going in my favor. And so, the Democrats, I think, have a lot of work to do, and they can sit there and churn up all this false bravado about the big blue wave that's coming. But if they're not ready to step up to the plate like they did in Virginia and Alabama, they could be sitting there with control of nothing. And Donald Trump with momentum going into 2020.
Well, here's why I think Stacy Dash is interesting, because now I'm going to go purely political analyst and strategist on you. She is running in a district that has historically zero chance of going Republican. Her looks and her celebrity will make her someone the Democrats have to spend money to defeat, which means money that the Democratic National Committee wants to spend in places like Alabama and Virginia. Now they're going to have to spend in Compton.
No, I disagree with that.
Why?
I mean, listen, it's well known throughout the black community who and what Stacy Dash is. And I actually am somewhat offended by the fact that you think that people are going to vote for her just because of her looks. Like, in the black community, no. Stacy Dash is not going to get black women to vote. And, in that area, she's not going to move the needle enough to where the Democrats are going to spend any money to try to slow her down. They may throw a little bit more than they would have previously. And if you want to say, hey, that's, $10,000.
No. I'm not going to go that. I'm not going to go that petty.
They're not going to have to spend enough money where it'll matter.
All right.
Else.
So I promise. So, okay. I guess I'm doing the Sarah Palin factor when I'm saying that Sarah Palin had no business becoming the governor of a state, but she was a former.
Yeah, but look at the demographics of the state.
Fair. I'm not. I'm not. I am not. Hold on. I am not comparing Compton and Wasilla, Alaska. Okay, don't put that on me. But if my comment there was out of touch white guy, I'll own that. You know better than me. But that's what enters my head. And by the way, the people would be.
It was.
What?
It's not. I mean, I get it. You're trying to think strategically, but it's just it just there's nothing that
Okay. Here,
like voting history tells us that they're now listen. I could be wrong, and there could be a big huge surprise, and if that happens, then I'll have to eat crow. But I'm like Stacy in this particular district. It will. She doesn't have a snowball's chance in hell.
okay.
She just doesn't.
Okay, but here's a reality that backs me up. You might be 100% right, but the people who are making this, if you're going to call me out of touch white guy, the problem is the people making that decision are out of touch white guys.
No. I mean,
come on.
No.
Come
I
on.
think the people who are making the decision on how to spend money, like they're going to look at it. They're not going to look at who they're up against. They're going to look at the history of that area. They're going to look at that district and say, this district has gone blue for the last however many decades. And does Stacy Dash threaten that? No. Okay. Will she get more support than the typical Republican gets? Maybe. I doubt it, because there's a serious backlash against her in the Black community. And we're talking about California, that's traditionally a blue state all the way through, in most sections. And we're talking about fucking Compton and Watts. I mean, your voter turnout is going to be garbage anyway. And the people who turn out to vote are going to be, older Black people who are not going to vote for Stacy Dash. And I think that's the way that they're going to look at it. And they're going to say, we're not spending money over there.
This is obviously a developing story, and I'm sure as 2018 approaches, we'll talk about it more. But I defer to your opinion and expertise when it comes to what's getting said in the Black churches and the Black community about politics. I know. I think. Are you laughing at the fact that you haven't been in a Black church in a long ass time?
Oh, my expertise in the Black churches. Okay.
Well, no, but I think you're more qualified to say what will affect, largely Black communities.
Which is fair. You're absolutely right.
I just said it in a funny way.
I do. I am more connected to those circles than you are by far. And I guess I do want to say, like, listen, I'm not a political analyst. I'm not a political expert. I guess I have a degree in political science.
So you do play one on our show, and you've been right a number of times.
So, but I've been watching this stuff for a long time, and knowing how both parties think and how they spend money, they don't look at when they take a lot of different analytics in, but a big factor is history, and a big factor is demographics. And history and demographics are strongly against Stacy Dash, and they're not going to throw precautionary money, not in this race. If they know that they've got a slam dunk, they're not going to spend money there. Now, if they're wrong about that, then I guarantee you they will go back and analyze it. But I don't think they'll be wrong about it. So I don't think it really poses a risk.
Back to something you said before, though. If there's one thing the Alabama Senate race did, it's shine a light on the fact that you won this you got this impossible victory in large part because of the predominantly black, predominantly black, the black vote. I mean, they came out in much larger numbers than were expected, especially in the special election, and they flipped a seat that was considered untouchable. The reason our buddy Jefferson Beauregard Sessions III was chosen to be Attorney General is in large part because that was considered a very safe Senate seat, and then that did not end up being the case.
You're absolutely right. I mean, so that goes back to me saying that, the Democrats have got to be very aggressive in their ground game. And, getting on the phone, going door to door, going to churches, going to places where Black people are, setting up some sort of center in these neighborhoods, getting young Black activists out there, talking to people as much as they can, getting in people's ear, getting them to vote, showing passion. Like they have to do it. They have to put a lot of energy into it. There's some things that I've even thought about that I could do. The one issue is that kind of here locally in Cleveland. Cleveland is a predominantly blue city area,
Right.
right? This district usually goes pretty blue. So you want to get people out to vote just to keep it that way. If that's where your political leanings lie. But that's what's gonna have to happen. If they want to see some sort of a blue wave, or even if you want to just see a shift where you get control of the Congress, so at least if there's some balance, it's going to take a really Herculean effort on the Democrats' part, and you hope that they're prepared.
Yeah. All right. So we should probably wrap this up, but we started before we got on the air. We started talking about something, and I know you want to jump on this. I don't know where it's going to go. I just know it doesn't go well for me. But we were just talking about, all right, talk about the Wu-Tang Clan. Something happened with the Wu-Tang Clan. I have no idea.
Oh, no, okay. I didn't know. I actually forgot where you were going, but now I know. Okay, so nothing happened with the Wu-Tang Clan. Martin Shkreli, who they call him the Pharma-Bro, he was sentenced today, 7 years in prison. Right now, he was the guy who jacked up the prices of different medications that people needed to live. I think it was EpiPens. Is that right?
No. EpiPens was a different one. This is the guy who jacked up the price on medications that fought HIV.
Yeah, there were medications that people need that were. He jacked it up like 500% or something like that.
I think it was much more than that, actually, but
it's sort of tough. It was some crazy amount, but either way, he made these medications all of a sudden unaffordable, and then that wasn't necessarily illegal, but then he had done some other things after the fact or before the fact that were defrauding investors, and he was found guilty of that and sentenced recently to 7 years in prison. Now,
correct.
Where the Wu-Tang Clan comes in is a couple of years ago, the Wu-Tang Clan made an album where they only made one copy. And then they put it for auction, and they said, whoever gets it, they get the album, and you do with it what you want. So Martin Shkreli,
yep.
Pharma-Bro, won that auction, and he got the album. And then, in typical dickhead fashion, he's just like, nope, not releasing it. It's mine and mine only. Well, when they sentenced him today, the FBI seized the Wu-Tang album. And so the question is, like, what happens to it? I think that they should auction it off again, and hopefully whoever gets it, they release it or whatever, because obviously as a Wu-Tang fan, I want to hear it. And they're not the first ones to do it. I don't know. I can't remember how much he paid for it, but it was it was an insane amount of money that he paid for it. I don't know how.
Oh, I'm glad I didn't know this prior to our conversation, so I could experience this on recording.
Yeah, it's nuts. But I know the feds seized it. Now, what I don't know is, like, they seized it. He's going to jail for 7 years. So does it get auctioned, or do they just hold it, and then does he get his possessions back? Now, I'm thinking because he defrauded people, he owes money, and so that they'll auction it off to help pay back restitution to the people that he owes money to, legal fees and all that other stuff. So it will be interesting to see what happens to that. I'll definitely.
Perhaps the most amazing part of this is Martin Shkreli is one of the few human beings on this planet who makes me look straight out of Compton. Own it. Oh, you don't. You can't.
Okay,
dude, that's a Martin Shkreli comment, not a Jim comment.
He's just a small.
I've done a push-up in my life. I win.
Yeah, exactly. And not that size is everything,
right?
But he's a very small, unintimidating.
I'm a nerd. I'm a nerd. That guy makes me look like whatever. Okay, I'm
Right.
not going to
I mean,
dangle
I
something
don't-
out there because you won't give it to me,
I
but
don't
I'm
want
right.
to bash a guy too much on his looks. I mean, he is a little down on his luck going to jail for 7 years, and I don't know how well things will go for him there.
I think you do know. Well, he's
Although
going to go
probably,
to his version of prison will not be. I mean, he's going to jail for defrauding investors.
He's not going to bang me in the ass jail. So,
right. Exactly.
He'll probably go somewhere that's
got conjugal visits. Yes.
Like that. So, but yeah, that's what's going on with that. But you know what? I am actually running short on time. I need to. Got some things to do. Need to get my weekend started. You have a jump on me on the whiskey, and I am jealous. So
a solid jump. I'll have you know. All right, man. Good talking to you. I'm sure we'll talk in the next couple of days. And now I need to grab my phone and see how many freaking alerts about the Tyrod Taylor trade I missed, and turn on Buffalo Sports Talk Radio, where who knows what stupidity will be going on. So,
yeah.
All right, man. Good talking to you. Any final words?
No, man. Just you are out in North Carolina through the week, right? So
yeah, I fly back Friday.
All right. Well, stay out of the hills. Be careful, and we'll talk to you guys later.
I'm going to the beach tomorrow. Out.